Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Soll. I am the Threat Detection Incident Response Practice Manager, welcoming you to AWS reInvent 2023. Here with the CIRT team. Introduce my friends here. Ben, go ahead.
Hi everyone, Ben Fletcher. So I am the watch lead for the CIRT team in EMEA, and Matt's here with me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Matt Gurr, and I'm the APJ watch leader in Asia Pacific region.
Yeah. So we've been here before. We've talked about the customer incident response team. What we wanted to do today was really talk about the international version, right? So what we do for customers all around the world is help them with security incidents that happen on the customer side of the shared responsibility model. Now we can talk more about that in a little bit, but for the two of you, what I'm really hoping to talk about is what does that mean for your region specifically? Because there's different things that we've got to do. Ben, what about you? How do you think about that differently?
It's funny because we were discussing this before, and actually there isn't much difference in the regions. It's still a security incident that the customer is requiring assistance on.
Yeah.
I think what works really well is because we have these region leads and this ability to pass on tickets and look after the customers globally following the Sun model, that if a customer requires that, we can absolutely facilitate that.
Yeah. Well, so you say that, but like GDPR, right?
Yeah.
That's not something we have to necessarily worry about. How does GDPR affect what you do, the mechanisms that you use to investigate tickets? Yeah,
absolutely. And this is always a question in terms of if an incident has been confirmed, what data was exfiltrated, if data was exfiltrated. Yeah. There is always a GDPR element with the EMEA customers. But to be honest, in the way that GDPR is written, if you're a global company and you have European customers, yeah, that doesn't necessarily restrict you regionally. So Matt, I don't know, I assume, experience the same in terms of the GDPR question.
Absolutely. Like, I think from what we see in our region is the same thing. If you're a company that deals with European citizens' data, then you're covered by GDPR. So from that perspective, it's the same in our region.
Yeah. So how do the different regional requirements affect you in Australia? Because you cover the entire Asia Pacific region. Is there anything special that you pay attention to for customers, or any real regional differences?
I think the only one I can think off the top of my head is really data sovereignty. Yeah. People really want to know where their data is, which region it resides in, and then from an incident perspective, how we manage that. Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that. Like how do you drill down in that? How do you give customers that sense of security that the data is sovereign and it's where it's supposed to be?
I think there's a couple of things there around the design patterns. So how a customer designs for that upfront. Yeah. It's different from an incident perspective because we're really trying to get to the root cause or the bottom of the incident. Yeah. Straight up. So when we look into the data patterns, I suppose, that's where it's like, well, are you covered under the GDPR Compliance Act? Where is your data stored? And then how are you managing that? So I don't think it really matters so much as to the location of the data from a GDPR perspective if we use that use case. Yeah. But it does from an Australian perspective when we have our own Australian privacy principles. People want to know that the data is in the Australian region.
I think jumping on that point as well, when we first engage with customers, it's really also understanding their use case in terms of, because that gives us an indication of what they're looking for, how they want assistance. So understanding their use case, where the data is, what they're doing with the data. One of the first questions I always say, okay, so what is this being used for? And then that gives you an idea of what they would be most concerned with.
Well, talk more about that. So just a little bit about like the mechanisms for customers to get to us, right? So they submit the cloud support ticket, cloud support routes it over to us. Just pulling on that thread a little bit more, what's that look and sound like to you? What are some of those first questions you ask customers in order to get to that point of determining, your investigation objective, and then, building out that mechanism?
Yeah, absolutely. And really the first thing is, what is the indicator of compromise? So, what is this event that's led you to think there may be a security incident?
Yeah.
And then from there, we're trying to baseline what is usual in that. So, why is this unusual to what you experience, and, what are the implications of that?
Yeah.
So it's really, if you don't have context in terms of what you're investigating, so that there's a whole bunch of cloud trails to look at, there's different elements that you can look at, without understanding the story behind it and what would stand out, they just look like a bunch of cloud trails.
Right.
And that's really getting that understanding and really sort of, right, what do you normally do? What do you expect to see?
Yeah.
So and you say, okay, so that's abnormal. But is that abnormal just because the system's running in a slightly different way, or is that because it's actually some sort of security event?
Matt, go ahead.
I think my first question is, do you have logs?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Well, so that's what I was going to say, because you said something earlier that I wanted to drill down on, for just kind of building on what he said. You brought up the design principles, right? Like how is it designed? So to Ben's point about trying to figure out what's normal, what's abnormal, to help them, during the investigation. What would you tell a customer in the preparedness stage, right? Like how should customers be preparing for this? And I'm pretty sure you're going to be talking about logs here, right? Something like that.
Absolutely. I think it's really key that you have logs. You can't do an incident response on stuff that you don't have logs for.
Right.
It's really key to being able to be a pathologist and pull apart the reactive incident. To be able to look into that, and I think that's where we're at. So if we can move forward into like a reactive approach, do some threat modeling, baseline the app, understand what it's talking to, have like some maps, build some playbooks so you know exactly what you're trying to do when it happens. Because the worst time to make a decision in an incident is during an incident. Yeah. And it's the most expensive, it's the most time-consuming process that people will ever go through, right? So if you can do a little bit of pre-planning up front, then it will be a smoother experience. And I think I'll just add to that piece around understanding where your data lives and having a classification for it of like what it means to you, which stuff is really impactful and what isn't.
That's a lot. I mean, I know so many of the customers that we hear from, they're in the middle of an incident and they're trying to make these decisions. It's great that you bring it up. I was on an EBC today with a customer, talking about, we do not want to be making decisions, when it's really, really bad, right? Yeah. But, one of the things that we hear from customers is that, you just brought up like a 6-month effort. Threat modeling, this really hard stuff, the data discovery and everything else. What would be like Ben, what's the top 3 things a customer can do today if they haven't started down that path? Just start somewhere. What would be the top 3 things?
So I think the most important thing, and the thing that you sadly find out fails during a security incident, is the processes. Yeah. And the only way of doing that is tabletopping them and practicing them. And one of the things I always say to customers is, if you don't have time to practice them, you definitely don't have time for a security incident.
Right.
So setting that time aside.
That's a really good way to think about that. Yeah.
Setting that time aside is absolutely valuable, because there'll be so many assumptions that you make as, we all do it. We assume that we've got those up-to-date phone numbers and all those things. And usually it's actually more of a process thing than a technology thing. So you've challenged me for 3. First one is...
That's one. Come on, man.
the first one is that. Then it is looking at what is most important to you. So, we talk about the threat modeling. Is it you've got PII data? Are those the things? Are those the things you're really worried about losing?
So data discovery.
Yeah, and then putting in the measures accordingly. So the logs, the protection. And really, I think the third thing is a constant iterative process. So, constantly looking at the permission sets. As your environment changes, and this is a moving target. The threat landscape is evolving, and so is your environment. So making sure that it is a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that wholeheartedly. I think we've moved way beyond the 6-month or annual security check for governance and compliance. It needs to be real time. We need to be able to see it constantly.
What would you add on? He just listed 3 pretty good ones. What would you add to it?
No pressure. They're pretty good.
I think from our side, there's some really good documentation that was developed out at APJ for security baseline. It provides 10 prescriptive items that you can run through, look at your account today. I think they have real impact on the security posture of your account. And I think that's probably what I'd add.
Let's talk about tickets. I think one of the best things that we've done over the last year and a half is developed our on-call handoff process, right, guys? I mean, like, if we get a ticket in EMEA and the customer needs continued help, that ticket goes around the world, all the way to the other different regions. Matt, tell me how you work with that. Tell me how you identify those tickets. What do you do? How do you do it?
So from an on-call handover perspective, we have a good relationship with our EMEA friends, and we also speak regularly to the West Coast folk.
Good? I mean, come on. Let's be honest here. They're tolerable,
yes,
right?
Yeah. If only they didn't have Guinness. And so we have a very good process. It's a good mechanism that we've built over time where we have it doesn't matter where an incident occurs. We're able to take that in our own business hours to help customers. And so when it comes to doing extra work, like looking at doing log analysis, we're able to speak to our colleagues, and there's a process that we have for managing that.
Yeah. How about you? How do you think about that? How do you think about the on-call handoff process, receiving from Matt and the APJC over to you, and then over to the U.S. East Coast?
Yeah. Again, I think it's always about communication. So if there is a ticket that we want to hand over, and there's various reasons why we hand over, and sometimes we keep it in the region because the customer's happy that the compromise has been contained, and now it's just a log analysis. Well, there's no need to hand that over. If it's an ongoing and there's containment still required, those are some of the primary sort of handovers. So the first thing we'll do is try and jump on the phone and just I will have read the ticket, I've gone through it, and then I'll phone up somebody like Matt, whoever is on call, and say, right, this is my understanding of that. Is that correct? And he'll confirm that and say, well, actually, there's an extra bit to it or element to it. So it's this process thing but it's always about communication. So it's understanding, again, how the customer is. Do they have logs enabled? And, how we take it from there.
Hoping the logs are enabled.
Yeah,
hoping the logs are enabled.
Please enable your logs.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get there in a second. Yeah.
And we're such a data-driven company, so we have that data, but it's really the context, I think, through the handover process between the regions of this is the timeline that we're working towards, this is the work that's been done to date, this is what needs to be done. It's really structured and clear.
I think watching our handoff process grow and watching it get better and get more crisp with customers, and being able to say, okay, by this time in this date, we're going to have this data for you. I know I've heard from customers, they're really happy with that. They really like that sort of service. What have you heard the same? Have you heard anything different? How have customers been reacting to you in your region for that?
I think customer anecdotes are fantastic like that. Where we didn't realize that there was this.
We were here.
This thing available,
right.
And thanks so much for being able to dig deep into that really quickly.
Yeah.
We don't think we ever would have been able to do that. So it's really good. The feedback that we get is amazing.
And
it actually, as a responder, it gives you warm and fuzzies from that perspective that you've done something well.
We're doing
today.
something good. Yeah, absolutely. How about you? What have you heard there in EMEA?
I think actually jumping on what Matt said earlier about instances are a strain on resources, but they're also they're challenging times for the customers. And I think what the feedback we've got is we bring that level of calmness to the situation. We've seen this before. And, we can talk you through the best way to contain this and look at what happens. But most importantly, learn from it.
Yeah.
We really want to, we never want to talk to people twice. We always say that, and we pride ourselves on that. And there's so much sort of is such an opportunity for education through this, and they're really grateful for that. So things like the security snapshot that we perform for the customers, again, we will run that for them and present that to them and show them the changes that that they would benefit from.
I'm feeling bad now. We don't have the links for all of our open source tools. I mean, hopefully there's a way we can talk to the customers later and give it to them, because we've got all of our playbooks and all of the other tools that we've built for them. Gosh, yeah, we got to get them some way. All right, so just a few minutes left. Top 3 things that customers. Hold on. I know. Here I go again with those. Top 3 things you need customers to do when they call us.
Have a support ticket.
Yeah.
Have a timeline or of an event timeline of something that's of interest, and understand a containment strategy. And because I think there's a great, I think it's Benjamin Franklin that had the quote, it's like failing to plan is planning to fail. And so I think that's my takeaway.
All right. How about you? Top 3 things.
Top 3 things. Obviously, support case, really important. That enables us to work with you and communicate with you. Telling us what your indicator of compromise is and what does that mean, and then telling us what you're most concerned with, because that gives us direction. So are you concerned with the application continuing to run? Are you concerned with data exfiltration? What are the things that are you want to understand better?
Outcomes.
Yeah.
Outcomes. What's your desired outcome?
Yeah.
So indicators. So I actually hear customers talk a lot that and it's not that they don't understand indicators of compromise. It's that they get confused. So when you say an indicator of compromise, like layman's terms, give me an example. What's an indicator of compromise to you?
Indicator of compromise is that there's been an action performed inside your cloud environment that, as far as you know, you didn't perform.
Example. Give me an example.
S3 bucket objects being deleted.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. So having customers understand that, having customers looking for that. So that's one of the other things that we see and hear a lot is customers they're not picking up on some of these things. And now with just a minute and a half left or so, Matt, what can customers put in place to get those detections sooner? What should they be looking for?
Easy one, guard duty.
Guard duty?
Turn that on.
Yeah.
You don't have to have all your logs enabled. You don't have to go through the whole account or multiple accounts.
Yeah.
You just enable that and away to go.
All regions, right?
All regions.
Because if a customer's not operating in a region and there's resources that get spun up there, you should be getting alerted, right?
Yep.
How about you? What can customers be doing for detections?
For detections,
yeah,
I'd absolutely say guard duty. I would take it a step further and actually use organizations, limit down the region that you're actually on. I think a far simpler protection solution. And of course, if you've got web applications, Inspector is a great tool to, again, scan, look for those vulnerabilities, and making sure that those aren't other sort of vectors of attack.
One of the things I tell customers a lot is billing. Make sure they're looking at their billing statements. We get a lot of tickets from customers that realize, unauthorized resource usage from billing. I think those are really important, and that goes. It's interesting. I think that goes to a larger picture of a strategy. One of the things I talk to customers a lot about is make sure you have an incident response strategy that involves billing.
Absolutely.
All right, 10 seconds. What do you want to tell customers?
What do I want to tell customers? Wow. I think
you're down to 7 seconds, man. Come on.
You haven't got long.
I think I touched on it earlier. Be prepared. Have a plan.
How about you?
That was mine. Be prepared. Plan it.
Very good. Everyone, my name is Robert Saul. I'm the Threat Detection Incident Response Practice Manager. I lead the Customer Incident Response Team from AWS reInvent 2023. Thank you.